The Korean Peninsula, November 1950. Winter arrived early that year. A brutal, merciless cold swept across the mountains of North Korea, carving ice into the roads and turning every breath into white mist. Temperatures dropped so low that weapons froze, radio cables stiffened like wire, and soldiers woke up with frost caked into their eyebrows. The Marines who fought at the Chosin Reservoir would later say the cold was an enemy all on its own. But that morning, another enemy was waiting for them. One they never saw coming. As the U.S. Marines moved north through the mountains, Chinese forces launched a massive surprise offensive. Entire regiments of the People's Liberation Army swept down from the hills, cutting off roads, surrounding small units, and severing lines of communication. It happened fast, too fast. Battalions that had been marching in formation suddenly found themselves isolated, scattered, and fighting to survive. Among these units was a tank of the 1st Marine Division. An M26 Pershing, a 46-ton giant of steel and engine thunder, painted on its side, in bold white letters, was a name the crew had chosen half-jokingly weeks earlier: the Alamo. The name came from the famous Last Stand in Texas history. The crew laughed when they chose it. "Let's hope we never earn it," the commander had said. But war has a way of turning jokes into prophecy. The calm before the storm. The tank crew, 4 men packed into steel, received orders to hold a narrow mountain pass south of the reservoir. It was a critical choke point. If it fell, thousands of Marines positioned further north would have no escape route. The commander knew what this meant. "This is the line," he told his crew, quietly. "We hold it as long as we can." The night was silent, too silent. Snow drifted across the road in thin, ghost-like ribbons. The stars flickered above the frozen mountains. Inside the tank, the men huddled around the engine's faint heat, listening to the eerie stillness outside. Just before dawn, the radio crackled with fragments, distorted voices, broken words. Enemy movement heavy everywhere. Then silence. The mountains swallowed the air again, and then a sound, not one sound, but many boots crunching in the snow, dozens of them, hundreds. The first wave. The tank commander lifted his binoculars. At first, he couldn't see anything. The fog was too thick, a white curtain stretching across the valley. But then shadows emerged, figures. Dozens of them. Then more behind them. A wave of soldiers moving down the slope, silent and determined. The commander didn't hesitate. Driver, engine on. Gunner loaded. He. All stations, prepare to engage. The Pershing roared to life. A second later, the first shell left the barrel. The mountains lit up. The explosion tore through the first line of attackers, but more kept coming, rushing through the smoke, spreading along the ridge, pushing toward the tank from every angle. Machine guns opened up. Tracers cut through the snowy air. The tank shook with each shot, its hull echoing like a beating drum. The enemy kept advancing, fearless, relentless, determined to reach the tank at any cost. Hours of fire within minutes. The Alamo was fighting for its life. The .30 caliber machine gun overheated. Snow melted around the tank from the engine heat and the constant firing. The loader's gloves began to freeze stiff every time he opened the breech, sweat icing into frost the moment cold air hit it. Inside the tank, it was chaos. The loader shouting, "Next shell! Next shell!" The commander calling targets. Left ridge, 200 meters. Fire! The gunner breathing through clenched teeth, lining up shots as fast as the turret could turn. And outside, wave after wave of attackers pushed forward, disappearing into smoke only to reappear seconds later. The tank took hits. Small arms fire pinged off the armor, grenades burst nearby, and one blast cracked a headlight. Another hit dented the side plate and sent a shock through the interior. Still, the crew didn't stop. The 5th hour, the sun rose higher. The cold grew sharper. The ammunition grew low. For 5 hours, the tank held its ground, firing until the barrel glowed faintly in the icy air. The men were exhausted. Their hands were numb. Their ears rang from constant thunder. At one point, The commander called over the intercom. We're staying. We hold until someone comes through. Nobody bails. There was no argument. They all knew what they were doing, buying time. Time for the Marines behind them. Time for the wounded being carried through the mountains. Time for the entire division trying to escape encirclement. If the road fell, thousands would fall with it. The 6th hour the tank could no longer move. Hits to the suspension locked the tracks in place. The Alamo had become a steel bunker, a stationary fortress in the middle of a frozen battlefield. The crew adapted. The loader passed rounds by hand as fast as he could. The gunner fired through the smoke. The commander climbed halfway out of the top hatch, directing fire, ignoring the icy air slicing across his face. Inside, the smell of hot oil and steel filled the air. Outside, the valley trembled from the battle, and still, the enemy came, the rescue finally. After nearly 7 hours, friendly troops broke through the ridge. A column of Marines pushed forward, firing as they advanced. The attackers began to fall back, disappearing into the fog as quickly as they had appeared. When the Marines reached the Alamo, they expected to find it abandoned or destroyed. Instead, they found the tank still running. The paint on the hull was scorched black. The armor was dented and cracked. Steam hissed from the engine vents. A machine gun hung twisted from its mount. But the crew, frozen, exhausted, barely standing, was still inside, still alive, still at their posts. The Marines who arrived looked around the tank in stunned silence. The traces of the battle were everywhere, etched into the snow and earth around the Pershing. The tank had held the entire valley, alone. Because of that stand, thousands of Marines escaped encirclement. Because 4 men refused to leave their post. Legacy of the Alamo. The tank was hauled back for repairs. The crew received commendations for bravery. But the story, like many stories of the Chosin Reservoir, faded into the cold Korean winter. Yet those who knew it never forgot. They remembered a tank that lived up to its name. They remembered a crew that held the line when everything around them fell apart. They remembered a steel giant called the Alamo, the tank that stood alone.